makes a monster? Today I ask that of you, and I want you to ask yourself, when you think of the word monster, what comes to mind? And today I ask of you to keep that image in mind, and I want you to ask yourself if it fits with Steve Hartman. Today I present to you not a man, but a child who is most likely scared and confused and just as likely innocent. And I want you to ask yourself if you can present that image of a monster onto that image. Today I present to you Steve Hartman, and today I ask you, what makes a monster?
Steve Hartman was sentenced 25 years to life for being the lookout for Bobo Evans and Richard King. And while doing that, to rob Mr. Nesbitt, and while doing that, they shot and killed him. They went to prison for the murder of Mr. Nesbitt, and they went on trial. They have multiple witnesses, and the two main witnesses that helped Steve's innocence were Laurel Henry and Bobo Evans. Laurel Henry went into the store that day to get medicine for her granddaughter because she was sick, and she said that she saw two men arguing with the owner, and she claimed she saw nobody else. Bobo Evans' testimony helped prove Steve's innocence because he didn't know anything else about the crime or anything else besides what he did in the crime.
Why is Laurel Henry relevant to the case? Laurel Henry is relevant because she was actually there. She was at the scene of the crime, and she saw two men arguing before the actual crime had happened. This is relevant to Steve's case in particular because she never saw Steve there. According to the case files, Steve was allegedly supposed to be a lookout for James King and Bobo Evans pertaining to the crime so that they would know whether or not someone was in there. For those of you unaware of what a lookout is, it's someone who scopes out an area before a crime is to be taken place so that the people participating in the crime can know whether or not someone's in there. Laurel Henry was there to get medicine for her grandchild. She testified as seeing two men arguing, and when later asked, identified one of the men as James King. That being said, she never saw Steve at the actual drugstore. It was said in the case files, and it was testified by Bobo, that he was there to be a lookout, and yet Steve and Laurel Henry never once saw each other. Speaking of Bobo Evans, his testimony is also relevant to Steve's innocence because he never knew Steve. All the information he got for the actual robbery, all the information that he said he had, it was all either taken from King or what he actually saw at the holdup. Meaning that he never spoke to Steve both before and after the crime, which he testified to, as well as he never actually gave Steve any money or actually had any correlation with Steve. The most he knew about Steve was from what King had told him, and other than that, it was from when Steve allegedly gave a signal, which was actually no signal. He testified to saying that he and King were waiting for Steve's signal. Steve came out of the drugstore supposedly. He never said anything or did anything, and they assumed that it was safe. He was actually testifying to Steve's attorney O'Brien, Detective O'Brien, which when he said, "So you're lying pretty much on what you've been told about this robbery." Bobo said, "Except what I seen." O'Brien, "And what you saw was when you were actually involved in the holdup." Bobo Evans, "That's right." That being said, I want you to consider the evidence presented to you today, and I want you to consider what you know about Steve and what you know about this case. And I want you to consider Laurel Henry, who was only there to get medicine for her grandchild and never saw Steve ever there. Bobo Evans, who only knows about the crime from what he was told by King or what he saw. And James King, who was only there to get some money and would have done anything to do so. Thank you.